Hello and welcome to a look at The Curse of Sherwood for the Commodore 64, a game that was released by Mastertronic. The scenario for this game is that the Sherwood Forest has been taken over by a cult called the Cult of Sagalia or something along those lines. And of course, Robin Hood and his merry men are not overly keen on such an occurrence, and people traveling through the forest and dwellers in the forest are under grave duress because of the presence of the cult. Now, the cult is not just consisting of boring old humans. No. It has interesting subjects such as ogre trolls, whatever they are, skeletons and werewolves, and even sport a dragon or two. And of course, those not so natural creatures are incredibly difficult to fight. And Robin and his merry men are fighting a losing battle to hold them at bay. But all is not lost, of course, because an exorcism of the cult is attempted. You have agreed to meet with the Bishop of Derby in order to complete the exorcism, but as you reach the edge even of the forest, you find that the bishop is rather dead, and he has a black arrow sticking out of him. But in his hand you find a parchment. It contains a rhyme, which I'm not going to repeat here. And you gather that that is likely the clues you need in order to dispose of the evil cult. So off you go. You are in control of Friar Tuck, because the other members of the merry gang are very busy trying to survive, and you lost the draw, whatever, probably through straws or something. Anyway, as I said, you are in control of Friar Tuck, and you have to navigate various different screens, fighting off various different enemies, and picking up certain objects that are left behind. When it comes to the interface, the game is actually quite generous and explaining exactly what the interface is, but let's just go over it quickly. Top left is your score, which is, score. Then you have a set of 3 boxes which contains items that you pick up. And to the right of that you have a box containing whatever weapon you are picking up. You can only carry one weapon at a time, but there are various different weapons available because, of course, the various different monsters you can fight have various different weaknesses. Very Dungeons and Dragons-esque. Skeletons, for instance, has a certain weakness to blunt weapons. Further to the right you have the number of lives remaining. It will go down to 0, that will be your last life. The various different items that you pick up, some of them are very logical, like for instance when you find a key outside a gate, fair to assume that those two are connected. But something like the sack of money, which is currently on screen at the moment, has to be taken to a hermit in order to get a map from him. When you enter buildings, there will usually be someone inside the said building running around willy-nilly. But if that individual is not shooting at you, you have to interact with them by running into them in order to get whatever item from them that you need in exchange for one of your items. If you should kill them, they will not drop the item that you need. But once the transaction is done, you can happily get rid of them. But that means, of course, that when you enter a building, you have to wait and see if the occupant of that building will start shooting at you. And if they do so, you can happily shoot back without consequences. An ice touch is something like the river that you have to cross at one point requires the ice wand to freeze the river so you can cross it, and the game contains a certain amount of details like that. For instance, there is a werewolf that you cannot harm because you need an object of silver, of course, because we all know that werewolves are vulnerable to silver. And it all makes logical sense, and especially if you follow the rhyme, you should be guided safely on your way. Mapping is perhaps not necessary in this game. I don't think it is large enough to require such, but it could be useful to write down a few notes just to have some sort of idea of where certain items belong and where they are picked up from and things like that. In that regard, there is no randomness in the game. The enemy types and items and whatnot are in the same locations in every single game you play, so you can make steady progress. From a graphical point of view, despite the fact that things perhaps are a bit basic, I've always enjoyed the fact that there's no superfluous graphics in this game. What is on screen is what you need to see. Enemies, the main character, shots being fired, a bridge to cross, a house to enter, that kind of stuff. And of course, you have the background clutter thing to give some sort of sense of being in a forest. And even though it is a very, very minimalistic approach to graphical effects, I think it suits the game incredibly well, and it sets a tone that is very, very atmospheric. Color use is simple, but it makes the different objects stand out. The one downside to it is the fact that enemy shots are yellow, and the main foreground color used is also yellow, so it can be challenging to see shots being fired at you from time to time. Depending on the enemy type, when there's a certain amount of them on the screen, the graphics can tank quite harshly, making it very, very challenging to avoid being hit by shots. When it comes to music, there's no such thing in this game, so that's easily covered. The sound effects, they are basic. Friar Tuck walking across the different screens sounds more like someone clapping than actual footsteps. And the sound of weapons being shot, fired, thrown, whatever you call it, and enemies dying is also a very, very simple sound effect, but it is incredibly clean, and I think it suits the game very, very well. There's nothing spiffy, archaic, or odd about the controls, so I'm just going to skip over that very, very elegantly and come to a conclusion concerning this game. The Curse of Sherwood is one of those types of games that once you know what you're supposed to be doing, you can complete it relatively quickly. It has an inflated difficulty in order to slow you down in the process of completing it a bit, which is something that certain people find incredibly frustrating. While the game is definitely not the best game ever made, and definitely not the best game I have ever played, I've always remembered it because of its graphical style and because of its sound. And bearing in mind, of course, that this cost a whopping total of £1.99 in the UK, and for that kind of money, you can't really be too demanding, and for that price, I think this is a perfectly enjoyable and serviceable little game. On that note, thanks for watching, take care, see you next time, bye bye for now.